Well, there was some big news that came out this week. President Joe Biden has made some really big announcements regarding cannabis. Maytal, are we ready to deep dive this?
Oh my gosh, let's do it. I'm so excited. This is like very big news. It's a historic moment.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's address the first thing that he talked about.
Okay, so he did two things. There was a proclamation and a statement. So the proclamation is law, it's effective immediately. It's to grant a pardon to anybody who has committed the act of simple possession under federal law. So it applies only to simple possession, federal law, and it's a pardon, which means it goes back in time. It
Okay.
doesn't mean from here forward it's not a crime anymore. It means I pardon those who have done it either today or any time in the past, whether
Okay.
they were convicted or not. And it's simple
Okay.
possession of a small amount of marijuana or cannabis, not with the intent to sell or distribute or you know,
Okay, so if anybody
manufacture.
has a trafficking charge or intent to distribute charge from the federal government, those are not included in this.
Those are not included at this time. No.
Okay.
Uh-uh.
So simple possession federal. So one of the main questions I keep getting is what would be a federal how do you get a federal cannabis charge? What does that mean?
I've for example, helped folks who were caught on federal land, like a park,
Okay.
or there's like a ranger and they get
Mhm.
a ticket for possession of
Okay.
marijuana because it's federal land technically. So anything that offense of simple possession of marijuana in violation of the Controlled Substances Act as currently codified at 21 USC 844.
Okay. So national parks, reservations, native lands.
Well, native lands, I don't really know because that's a tricky one. I'm not
Okay.
sure. But I would say parks, and or some other interaction with a federal officer that resulted in a conviction of simple possession. And that could mean that you were actually charged with something else, but the ultimate conviction was simple possession, which might have been pursuant to a plea agreement
Okay.
or whatever the case may be. They're saying it affects about 6,500 Americans,
Okay.
6,500 people.
So airports,
Airports could be one.
um, places where they receive federal aid, like a college campus.
Mm, I don't know. It's really just about who gives you the ticket. So a
Okay.
college campus, even though they're getting federal aid, they're not the FBI or the DOJ is not charged with enforcement of the Controlled Substances Act on that facility. So that's why it's really interesting because moving on to the statement, kind of to try and broaden this, because the truth is it actually like doesn't cover many people and
Yeah.
nobody's in jail for it right
Okay.
now.
So basically, there's not anybody in jail. The number is under 10,000, roughly
Yeah, in
6,500
the history
Americans.
of the United States, that's what they have like on
In the
record.
history of the United States, it's 6,500 people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or currently, maybe current. I don't know exactly
Okay.
how they, but yeah, it's
Okay. So really, this doesn't put a dent into fixing the issue, which is people with cannabis charges being barred from public housing, education, loans, opportunities, benefits, sometimes voting, sometimes obtaining a passport, and basically getting legally discriminated for the rest of their life. So 6,500 people. Um,
which is great for those 6,500 people,
yeah.
and I think it's very symbolic, incredibly symbolic of a desired policy shift.
Okay. Got it. Well, there's that. The second point he brought up, I believe he brought up that state governors need to consider pardoning people who have been arrested or charged with simple possession and now have that on their record.
Yeah, that's what we were kind of talking about. So because so few Americans are actually affected by a offense under simple possession, that's usually state sort of sovereign territory. So the Ninth and 10th Amendments
Mm-hmm.
give the states individual rights to enforcement and police powers. So general police powers that would usually come into effect for a simple possession case are state run programs, if that
Okay.
makes sense. So the state of California, it used to be, it still is, Health and Safety Code 11359, 11357, for those are crimes associated with cannabis. But of course, simple possession right now is not a crime in California, but in other states it is. So he's encouraging governors of other states to take steps to pardon simple possession in their state. So it's a call to decriminalization.
Okay. Got it. All right. And then his third point that he brought up. Do you
This
remember?
is the most exciting one to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's he's encouraged the powers that be, the human health services, what are they called? They're the let's see. Okay, Secretary of Health and Human Services and the Attorney General to initiate the administrative process to review expeditiously how marijuana is scheduled under federal law.
Oh, this is the exciting one, but also the most nerve-wracking one for me because descheduling is absolutely what we need. Take it off drug scheduling altogether.
Right. Consider it not a drug at all.
Consider it a plant, and let's regulate it like we would regulate any other psychoactive plant. The rescheduling part is the part that gives me fear because we're at Schedule 1. We're up there with heroin and with cocaine and fentanyl. If we place cannabis in Schedule 2 or Schedule 3, that would take the market away, completely wipe it out overnight. The federal government will have taken away states' rights.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is it just creates sort of this, what we saw a little bit with CBD being removed from, the schedule.
Mhm.
The devil's in the details, right? So it's just sort of figuring out, okay, we want to review what's happening with the current schedule and what the basis for that is. We all know there's no basis. I've been working in cannabis law for a very, very long time. And one of the first things we used to file with our filings was, the report by the federal government that marijuana had no harmful effect. And that was, I think, from the 70s, that report.
The Schaefer report.
Yeah,
Schaefer
the Schaefer.
Commission.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, it's been so long since I've talked about the Schaefer report.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's we've known that this. So this is a symbolic step forward, and hopefully they just find that there is no real actual harmful effects of cannabis. But
Yeah.
I think it's a stretch to actually think that they're going to go that far.
Right. They probably
know?
won't. But if we put it on Schedule 2 or Schedule 3, what happens is everything has to get FDA approval, and that's
Right.
already a 2 to 3 year process.
Right.
So we would be putting it in major backlog for all of the products that are currently on the market. So we don't want that. And the interesting thing about the Schaefer Commission that you mentioned, that they came together, decided that they were going to do research on cannabis, and they were going to put cannabis on Schedule 1 temporarily. It was
Right.
just a firewall.
Yeah.
And they were going to go look at the science and then decide what to do with it. They looked at the science. They found the harms that were there were kind of minimal. Like coffee, it absolutely has harms.
Yeah.
Behavior, intention matter. But overall, they found so many benefits, and the science said, hey, this actually doesn't even need to be on a drug schedule. This is something that people need access to, and we kind of need to rethink how we're looking at this. And unfortunately, President Nixon did not care about the science. Cannabis, which was supposed to only temporarily be on Schedule 1, stayed there because they made a decision that was not based on science and based on their politics.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. It's just crazy to be in this moment where this might actually be happening.
Mm-hmm.
Since the beginning of my career, it's been kind of pie in the sky.
Yeah.
Really, it's always the question, when's federal legalization? When's federal legalization? And with Obama, we saw the Cole memo and we saw some unwinding. Then we sort of experienced how quickly that could be reversed, right,
Yes.
through the Trump administration.
Correct.
And now the pendulum is swinging back through Biden. But does he have the political wherewithal to, pull it through, get reelected? Of course, the talks about the midterm elections and
Mm-hmm.
how important it is to go out and vote.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I think there's a senator from, where is it? Is it Pennsylvania? That he's kind of one of the main reasons. Apparently, he just met with Biden.
Yeah, Fettelman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to discuss this issue.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if we elect those folks during the midterm election, then,
Yeah.
we could continue to see progress. But we have to keep following up because it's been years since Biden's been elected. And, we're just starting to see a little bit of decriminalization. But, it also is sort of like a domino effect.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't you think?
I think it absolutely is a domino effect. That's what happened with legalization. We saw 2 states legalize, and then we started to see everybody else kind of get with the program over time. And now we're almost at 40 states who have some sort of cannabis legalization for THC. And honestly, I think if the people put pressure on their governors, explain to your governor how that charge that you got 20 years ago is affecting your life, your children's life, your spouse as well, how it affects your ability to buy a home, further your education, travel, vote. You have to put pressure on your politicians. And because you are a tax-paying citizen, they have to pay attention to their delegates. You get to call, make an appointment, and they have to see you and humanize what you're going through because they just may not know. They're dealing with so much. But if you actually can walk into there, give them a PowerPoint presentation on why this plant is not harmful, and then, I don't know, maybe read the new Jim Crow and give them stats on why this is BS and how you're suffering. So arm yourself with information and then go talk to the people that have the decision-making power.
Yeah, and that's an excellent, excellent point because I can think back to, several years ago, 2015, when we first started meeting with, various council members in the city of Los Angeles and other, influential folks about changing cannabis policy. And it was, I have such a vivid sort of recollection of this, of just walking into the official's office, sitting down, showing them a copy of some of our publications, what, it all means, and meeting with them repeatedly to educate them and then effect change. So
Mhm.
it really is important it does work.
Oh,
If
it
you're
does.
persistent and you're organized and, you keep going for it, it does work.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
They're there to serve you. It's just you have to make yourself be seen.
Mm-hmm.
And they genuinely open once you
Mhm.
give them information. They have no idea. So maybe
Mhm.
their ignorance is playing a part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think this is like a big sort of like signal and change?
I like to see the bright side of things, but I know Joe Biden's history when it comes to the drug war. Just like all politicians, he was
Mhm.
harsh.
Right.
He also has a child that has had issues with substance
Mm.
abuse. So typically, he's not going to be excited to kind of legalize
Mm.
cannabis. He comes from a generation in which they were taught the worst of the worst use this and become, this. So I don't have a lot of hope. I feel like right now there's a gang war. The Bloods, being the Republicans, and the Crips, being the Democrats, are at war, and we, the people, are caught in the crossfire, and we get used as collateral. That's all we are, is collateral. They actually do not care, is how I feel. So I think what Biden is trying to do is gain some popularity, and I think, that's pretty much what it is.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Like, where can we sort of shore up some voters? Here's
Mhm.
an issue
Yeah.
during the midterm elections.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the other side is doing the same thing. Neither one of them genuinely care. Like, they are acting in the best interest of the people that are funding them. And that's just how it is. We're not funding them.
yeah,
That's how I feel.
but we are electing them.
We are electing them. Yeah, you're right. I hope that for our community that this is kind of a wake-up call. We are not pawns. Patients are not pawns. The slap in the face of like this big announcement, in people's mind, oh my gosh, hundreds of thousands of people. And it's like, haha, just kidding. No, it's not. So I'd just like to see some transparency and honesty when they're taking these actions. Like, look, we know this hardly puts a dent into it. But it's a start. And tell me that instead of, writing your parade, pretending, because, people aren't going to Google what that number is.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And yeah, it's definitely a headline splasher.
Yeah.
But I do think it's symbolic. It's, it's the most movement we've seen from the federal government ever,
Right.
at least when it comes to decriminalization.
Yeah.
I would say the Cole memo, the Rohrabacher-Farr amendment, all these little pieces, when you start to string them together, we're getting more and more progress. But there's so much left to be done. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So much more.
Yeah.
We can get this done in our lifetime.
Yeah, it's just the devil's in the details, right?
Ooh, yes. Oh my goodness.
Another interesting thing I saw was that the cannabis stocks, I guess, are like soaring right now.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, well, in DC, we have a few different bills that are going before Congress. So we have the Banking Act, which is the SAFE Act. I personally am not a fan because there's no initiative to help the people that were harmed by this. It's literally just to benefit big business. We can say little business too, but the intention is for big business. And then you have the MORE Act, and then you have the one that was also brought forward by Senator Booker. I forget the initials of that one, but they're pretty much the same thing. One takes the federal government completely out, and the other one keeps the federal government in, and they get their taxes. So, and we're already at high taxes in California, another 10% total. Literally, we cannot, 50%, almost 50% at the retail level for the consumer. It's not doable. I just don't see how it can function. So states might be getting pushed through soon because of this too, as well, I think.
TBD. Yeah. We shall see. Well, stay tuned.
Stay tuned. As we know more, we'll be here.
We'll be here.
Yeah. Peace.